Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a spin through the biggest stories in MMA. And on today's episode, Jared Cannonier defeats RoboCop. And don't be calling Cannonier no gatekeeper either. In the co-main event, look, guys, I'll be honest, I was out of the room, but I could have sworn I heard DC talking to Kevin Hart at some point. So we'll go over it. And lastly, things are going to get a little bit uncomfortable here on SBC. It's one of the topics. It's just my job. Panel, I'm looking at you straight in the eye. We're going to talk about Yadong. All right. Sorry, it's my job. It's my job. Hello, everyone. Gorgeous George here on the con. And look at the distinguished panel we have for you today. Goes from Las Vegas, ready to bring the heat. Matt Wells from the Big D in Texas. He always brings it as well. And Mike Bond is the MMA media titan out in Toronto. He tried to get out of it, but he couldn't. He's stuck in the snow. Cold coffee's on the ones and twos. Let's get going. Great main event this past weekend as Jared Cannonier defeated Gregory Rodriguez. They went back and forth. Some big artillery was thrown between these two big middleweights. Cannonier, of course, got his hand raised in the fourth round, with the fourth round stoppage, I should say. And I want a reaction from the guys. Matt, it's been a while since we've seen you. You start off, man. What did you think of that fight this past weekend?
I was impressed by Jared Cannonier's resolve, right? Because the way that Gregory Rodriguez came at him, early in that fight was tough to deal with, man. RoboCop's a very heavy hitter, as we have seen in the past, but we've also seen that he's, capable of getting hit as well. But Cannonier had to weather a hellacious storm, man. He got dropped twice and found a way to stay in the fight. I mean, you kind of look back at the previous fight for Jared, and you can not the one against Cabohario, but the one against Imavov. You could say that stoppage was kind of a little bit early, maybe, so to speak, but it was in the fourth round, and that was a heavy hitting fight as well. But we see Cannonier, man, he can take some damage and just keep coming, and he proved that again. He's extremely tough, and it's also a reminder that, hey, Jared Cannonier used to fight at heavyweight in the UFC. I don't know if you guys remember that. Mm-hmm. So the guy can take some damage. He's got a very good chin, and he proved that he can outlast guys like Gregory Rodriguez, and that's what happened here. Weathered that storm, and proved why he was a title challenger, and he's still trying to get in that mix again. As you said, don't call him gatekeeper just yet.
Matt, 40 years old and been losing more than he's been winning. Could this have been it for Cannonier? Maybe, if the UFC chose to part ways. What do you think, man? Like, how important was this dub for Cannonier?
Oh, I mean, it was important, I guess, for him more so to, like I said, shake that gatekeeper label. I think he's going to be in the UFC for quite a while, just because he's a main event fighter for him. He always shows up, and he's always going to be in exciting fights. He gets finishes, or he puts on a hell of a show. So I don't think they were going to part ways with him anytime soon. But gatekeeper label was the thing here, I think, for him more so than anything.
Incredible cardio. Mike, what were your thoughts on this main event, man? These guys were hitting each other like heavyweights out there.
Yeah, it was a good fight. Obviously, four total knockdowns, 2 each. That warrants a fight of the night bonus. That warrants everything we saw there. It was good stuff from both guys, but yeah, I think Cannonier, as Matt said, had his back against the wall. He'd never lost 3 in a row in his career in MMA. Had lost 2 in a row a couple times, but always bounced back and did so again here. And it was pretty clear like what the UFC was looking at, right? Like he gets Imavov, he loses, has a slight step down in ranking against Baralho, loses that, and then gets a guy who's quite a bit further down there as well, who's on a bit of a rise, and that like he managed to show that guy wasn't quite ready for him yet. So Rodriguez, I think definitely some hard learning lessons in here. He looked like a killer in that first round, but he could not sustain that pace, that output, all that stuff for a 5-round fight, which is obviously the first time he's been in this scenario. So Jared Cannonier, I mean, massive credit for surviving that first round. And as the fight wore on, you're like, oh, the experience, the veteran savvy, all that stuff coming in, and it led him to that win. So that was definitely very crucial for him to keep relevant, keep himself in the mix for names that I'm sure we'll get into that are, above him. I really liked what he said post-fight about like the reality of his position, how it's kind of an unfortunate spot for him given all the fights he's lost to guys above him. But I think he's at least in the running to maybe get a rematch with someone who's defeated him or someone obviously more highly ranked than Gregory Rodriguez now. So big win for him.
And goes Cannonier, or Mike used the word veteran. There was a lot of veterans in his corner, Emerson and Joe Riggs, and of course, John Crouch, the coach. This is a veteran camp. It seemed like the moves they made during the fight, they made adjustments, worked out for Cannonier. When he was in space, no bueno.
Yeah, no, that was one of the things that stood out to me the most. This is one of my favorite fights so far this year because of that aspect that you're describing. When you look at the way he won this fight, I felt was being that crafty veteran and having those veterans in his corner that were just giving him great advice. You could sort of tell, things weren't going his way early on, but he figured it out, and he could tell that little by little Rodriguez was losing steam. And you don't chop a tree down with one swing. You got to take swipes at it, right? And he learned that, and he started doing that. And even in trying to execute that game plan, like Mike said, he got put down again, right? Like this happened a few times in the fight, but he still figured out ways to make those adjustments. And you look at Gregory Rodriguez, right, and all the hype. And I mean, look, he came out and he was really tough early on, and he even had some moments later on in the fight, but it just wasn't enough. And it's really, when we think about it, RoboCop only had 3 movies, right? 4 and 5 didn't show up that night. 4 and 5 did not show up, my friends.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't look at it that way. All right. Yeah, because Riggs was telling him that's not the same man that started the fight, and they really, really hyped up their dude. Mike, let's go back to you. This is your wheelhouse. Next for Cannonier. So, yeah, let's unpack that. He's fought a lot of these same fighters that are at the top like him over the years. I think he threw out the name Whitaker, but then we found out Whitaker is either linked to someone, or, again, I don't know if that's rumor stage or official for a fight in Brazil. Where would you point Cannonier towards? Bear in mind, Dan Tom might be listening. He hates rematches, so don't upset the masses either.
Yeah, it is tricky. I think the fight you're alluding to is some Baralho Whitaker fight that's kind of being rumored. I don't know. That's not confirmed yet. We haven't confirmed that. So, but that makes a lot of sense, right? Like I could see that fight very much happening. And then where does that leave Jared? I don't hate the idea of a Sean Strickland rematch that people have been talking about, but I just don't know if the timing is going to line up. We're going to be talking about Sean Strickland later, like, the injuries and everything he went through from this camp, just fighting for a title. Like, I don't see him wanting to rush back in there. And, Jared, to his credit as well, he probably needs a little time after getting dropped a few times. I'm sure you need more breaks between the fights at 40 years old, things like that. But if you are looking at something that could line up timing wise, I think look no further than the fight this weekend in the co-main event of UFC Seattle between Fluffy Hernandez and Brendan Allen, both 2 fresh names for him. I think a matchup that you kind of go to the other side of the coin here. Obviously, RoboCop does have a ground game, but a big hitter. I don't think people regard Brendan Allen or Anthony Hernandez as these, dangerous, threatening strikers at this point in their careers. So I think it would give him a bit of a different look here and allow him a fresh opponent, all that stuff. So I think that makes sense to me right now. But a lot of these guys are coming off fights. People won, lost recently. So I think it's really just going to come down to timing and then how these next couple fights play out as well. We, of course, have a middleweight main event in early March between Marvin Vettori and Roman Dolidze as well.
Good point. Man, all I know is that middleweight's got some cardio machines. Cannonier, Strickland, Hernandez. Wow, those guys can go strong, 25 minutes. And then there's other guys that are massive fighters, great fighters, but them fading is their crutch. Anyhow, great stuff at 185. For so many years, we had Silva at the top and a bunch of other contenders, and now we have a lot of them. Look, in the co-main event, obviously I was joking. Youssef Zalal did defeat Calvin Kattar. I wish Calvin Kattar had fought the other rounds like he fought round 3. A lot more urgency. Things got a lot more exciting. Some open scoring jokes out there on Twitter. But what were your thoughts on that fight, Matt Wells? And what is the potential for a Youssef Zalal?
Man, it's tough to take away from this fight in a positive way if you're a fan of Youssef Zalal, right? Because he looked so good in the first 2 rounds. And then in the 3rd round, he just got on his bike and just ran away the whole time, right? I would have liked to see him, throw some counters on those exits when he was getting out of the way, when he was dipping and dodging. Like he was being a ghost in there literally, but he wasn't stinging. He wasn't making Kattar pay for anything except for like that one moment kind of later in the third round where he did stay in the ground and start throwing some strikes. But if you're being that elusive where you see everything coming, you should be able to sneak in a strike when you're exiting out there. But he wasn't doing that, and it made it tough to watch in that third round. And that's why he's getting all this criticism, man, because otherwise it was a great showing for him, right? In rounds 1 and 2, it was a fantastic fight. But the third round soured a lot of people on how he performed. But you also got to give Kattar some credit for what he did in that third round, for really doing everything he could to try to hunt him down and catch him, but he just wasn't able to. And yeah, it's tough to take away, like, what does this mean for like Zalal, right? Because it's like, dude, if you would have just kind of stood your ground a little bit more in that third round, I'd be like, okay, yeah, that was a huge performance. Let's see you up there against another top ranked opponent and see what you can do next. But now it's like, I don't know, like, what was he thinking in that third round? I don't know.
Well, let me stay with you here. All 4 of us watch other sports. Was he basically using the clock as his ally, the same like a football team that's maybe up 14-0? Hey, let's run and work that clock. Let's get some first downs. At the same time, Zalal could have made maybe an even bigger splash if he finishes Kattar too.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even necessarily that you had to go out there and finish him, but like I said, like if you're able to just dip and dodge literally everything Calvin Kattar is throwing at you, why are you not throwing in a jab on the exit? Why
Like
are you not
Shabazian.
throwing in a kick to the body as you're, you just do a little bit more to show that you're actually still engaged in the fight, right? Like you said, like when those football teams are up, they're still going to try to punch you in the mouth with a run up the middle or a little streak to the outside, right? They're still going to try to get first downs in a big way sometimes, but man, it was pretty frustrating to watch that third round, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. How about you guys? Do you believe in Zalal's future? Kattar is a tough test, but he's also had lost his last 3 before this fight, so he didn't catch probably a prime Kattar either.
That's the weird thing about this fight was I thought maybe he could have made a bigger jump, and the first 2 rounds were great game planning, great performance, great execution. That third round might have hurt him a little bit though when you think what's next moving forward, because it's no secret what Dana White and the matchmakers like, and that is not what they like, right? To see a fighter kind of running around and doing that. Calvin put his foot on the gas a little bit too late. But then again, when you give Yusuf Zalal a microphone, he's so energetic. And even in the post-fight show, he's very likable. So maybe it just kind of wiped the slate clean. I don't know. But definitely when you get a guy like Calvin Kattar, I don't think you can look back. I think you have to look forward and look at more challenges moving ahead, tougher ones. I kind of like that Brian Ortega matchup that he threw out there. But we'll have to see what Dana White and the matchmakers thought of that last round. If it rubbed them the wrong way or not, we'll tell by who he gets matched up with next, right?
Mike, what were your thoughts on Zalal? And then also maybe throw in, if you know, are there analytics that support that this guy is a rising star at all, social media or traffic?
I don't know about the latter. I think he's just kind of another guy there. I think people do like, as Goes kind of said, his enthusiasm, and he's not afraid to, make sure that saying he wants a rematch with Ilya Topuria is in the headline of like every single video he does, because they obviously have that link from their first fight. So he is doing stuff the right way for the most part. But that third round, I think, as everyone said here, just to hammer the point home further, like, was very off-putting. If you're a proponent for open scoring, I'd say look no further than that fight that was very clearly 2-0 going into the third, and then a guy trying to protect his lead against someone who was going completely desperate. I think we'd see a lot more of that. I know there is different layers to open scoring where just coaches might know and the audience might not know, and the fighters. I know all that stuff we can go into, but just broad strokes speaking here of what something could look like, and we don't want to see more of that type of stuff. To go out there, I mean, Calvin Kattar is tough as can be. He is not really getting finished by any of these dudes, whether they're grapplers or strikers, even though the skid has been downward. Didn't love the corner advice Faraz Zahabi was giving him throughout that fight, but that's another conversation as well. I think the big thing that hurt Yusuf Zalal here too is you come in, you get that win where you turn people off in the third round, and then you accuse Calvin Kattar of greasing too, right? And say like he was the slipperiest guy I've ever fought. I guess if you look at the numbers, Zalal was 0 for 8 on takedowns, but it's not like, you know, he was getting ones where he had the legs and Kattar was just like dead legging and slipping out of them. And it was just like, oh, this is unusual. It was, I don't think he even got that far in the takedown pursuits, really. So strange accusation by him. I think we all know Calvin Kattar is a pretty upstanding dude. So I would be quite surprised if there was credence to those claims. But yeah, I think Zalal, outside of getting like that name, the signature name on his resume, that if you just look at everything on paper and throw all this other stuff to the side, that's a great win for him. But I don't think all the stuff that goes inside of that is going to be elevating him in a significant way.
You guys have covered the sport for a long time. Let me ask you a quick question. When you heard that, did any of you go back to BJ, GSP, TriStar, greasing accusations, just even for a moment?
For a second, yeah. And I know the New England fans didn't take that too well. They were a little deflated.
Oh man, yeah, no, I thought of that for a second. I was like, whoa, Faraz is not going to want to hear that accusation because his gym went through a lot almost 20 years ago. Okay, guys, what was another highlight for you goes from this UFC Fight Night 251 card at the Apex?
Walter Walker. I thought that guy, if you see any of his interviews, him and his brother, they're so charismatic. They're so much fun. If he can match that, mirror that in the cage, which he's been able to do so far, do it consistently, I think the UFC is going to have a lot of fun with this guy. He's going to be a player.
That's 2 heel hooks. Watch out, heavyweights. All right, how about you, Matt Wells?
And Jose Delgado looked fantastic. He weathered that early attack from Connor Matthews and then was just like, all right, it's time to pick you apart. Scored his 6th straight finish. This dude looks like the future, you know, very well could be the future of this division, man. Like, I just liked everything about this performance. Can't wait to see what kind of level of competition he gets next.
Mike Bond, how about you?
I'm going to go with Gabriel Bonfim. I mean, the way he choked out Chaos Williams there, holy crap. Chaos has never been finished in MMA going into this fight. So to put him to sleep like that, eyes rolled in the back of the head, that was a visual scene. I'd be surprised if something beats that for our submission of the month in February, but we got a little more work to go here. But yeah, man, this is just slick stuff. I mean, he was out, took Herb Dean a minute or two or a second or two to completely discover it. But I think he got in there, you know, apt enough time right before the buzzer and stuff. So yeah, this was good stuff, man. How can you hate on this guy? I think 16 straight finishes coming into the UFC. Finally had decision in the last one and then rebounds here with a big finish. So great stuff. Not the best night overall, I guess, for the Bonfim brothers. They went 1-1, but this was a huge way to start the night and just a gruesome submission. Look at that.
Yeah, and you know, Matt was bringing up Zalal and Kattar. Why didn't he react off, you know, Kattar overextending in that urgency? And that's exactly what Edmund Shabazian did, man. He was letting his opponent kind of react with those feints, and then he just slipped and ripped, you know. And I thought Zalal had some of those openings too, but that was very, very slick work there from Edmund Shabazian. The guy is very, very passionate about fighting, but props to him for getting his hand raised. It was really, really nice work by him, and he gave a lot of credit there to his coach, Eric Nicksick. I think, are we going to see the highlight here? Oh, okay, my bad. Speaking of Eric Nicksick, it's time for topic 2. This is one of the best coaches in the sport here, a local guy here, Extreme Couture, and him and Sean Strickland, you know, they were overseas. They went together for Strickland, his fight versus Dricus Duplessis, and of course, we all know the result. Nicksick did an appearance on Ariel Helwani's show, and since then, there's been a little bit of drama between fighter and coach. Here's what he says. Here's part of a quote that he said. I think he needs to evaluate what he wants to do in the sport. If it's just money, then that's great. Let us know. I want to coach world champions, so my motivations are different. So I think that just to kind of show up and do that and not really back it up, to me, it was just kind of uninspiring. Strickland, of course, got wind of this, felt like he needed to address it, and he put out a statement of his own. I like Eric. He's a friend of mine. He's going to continue to be a friend of mine. Will he probably be in my corner? Probably not. We have so many great guys at Extreme. We have so many savages that can corner me. And that's the end of his quote. So, guys, let me ask you this. Was Nicksick fair to Strickland in making those comments? Let's go back to Matt Wells.
He was 100% fair to make these comments because Eric Nicksick is the head coach of Extreme Couture, a gym filled with other professional athletes who are trying to make a name for themselves, who are trying to reach gold. And when you have a guy that goes out there and literally just goes through the motions for 5 rounds, it doesn't show any urgency, you have to say something about it, because you're not going to accept that level of effort in a championship opportunity, right? You finally get there. A lot of us believe that was an undeserved opportunity for the title shot for Sean Strickland in the first place. So to go out there and go through the motions was really disheartening to see. And so you got to put a message out there. Like, if you're the head coach of the gym, be like, look, we're here. We get these opportunities. We really got to go for it. We're trying to bring gold home, right? So, if Sean doesn't want to compete for that at that level anymore, that's cool. Just let us know. But for everybody else, when I show up to this gym to coach, I'm trying to coach future champions. I'm trying to get these guys motivated to go out there and be the best version that they can be. If Sean Strickland just wants to show up and fight for money, that's cool. Thanks. Let us know. Please tell us that at the door so I can know, hey, this guy over here, though, he wants to be a champion. So I'm going to give him a little bit more attention when it comes down to it.
Mm-hmm. Goes, how about you? What's your take?
Look, I think the comments were very, very fair. I don't think there were anything, we didn't hear anything that we weren't saying ourselves, right, when we were watching the fight. But I do think maybe they came a little too soon, or better served behind closed doors. That I can agree with you. But the fighter-coach relationship is so different from pairing to pairing, right? Like, Eric is extremely competitive, whether it's MMA or if we're holding Xbox controllers, he is exactly the same, right? And Sean Strickland, he just didn't seem motivated in that fight. There were just a lot of things that were off. And I can tell how somebody being very competitive, it's a representation of yourself, right? As a coach, what's going on in that cage. Now, anybody with a brain, I think, that watched that fight, especially with the UFC giving us a peek into the corners, could tell that it wasn't really so much the coach, I think, that the blame was on. It was more the fighter. I think we saw great coaching, but he just wasn't executing. And I know that probably hit Eric right in the heart, so I kind of get why he did that. But I also understand Sean Strickland and why that would have bothered him to maybe hear that out in the media. I don't know how much interaction they've had just themselves before that moment. Maybe it was best served there. And knowing Eric Nicksick for as long as we have, he seems like the type of guy that if he makes a mistake, he'll admit it, and I think these two can get past that. And the key thing that when Sean was speaking was he said he's my friend, and I think that kind of tells you that this is something that will probably get mended. It didn't maybe execute the way it should have. Sean Strickland's not the only fighter that trains at Extreme Couture. Eric Nicksick doesn't only coach one guy, right? So you have to make sure that these things get buttoned up, but I'm sure they will.
All right, Mike, what were your thoughts on all this? You're muted.
Sorry, man. It's tough because I think we all have an immense amount of respect for Eric Nicksick, right? And like, he is one of the genuinely better people in the sport. So I don't think he went out there and said anything that he probably didn't already say to Sean, either immediately after the fight in the locker room or on the very long flight home from Australia. Like, I'm sure this was discussed. As Goes kind of said, maybe the timing of it wasn't perfect. Maybe if he waited another week, this wouldn't have resonated the same way. But we were in that couple day stretch of everyone in the MMA community shit on Sean Strickland for his loss, and everyone's coming out of the woodwork to take their shots at him. And maybe Sean, was rubbed even more the wrong way. It's one thing when, outsiders are coming at you. It's another thing when someone who's very close to you is coming to you. So I can understand why he was maybe hurt or bothered or felt inclined to respond. But as far as like the core of what Eric was saying, I don't think many people can disagree with that. Like, Sean didn't disagree with that. He didn't say like everything you said is wrong and how like I approach things, blah, blah, blah. He basically just said he didn't really, want him, I guess, in his corner anymore if he's going to be saying stuff like this, which is understandable. So I do think these guys will mend fences whenever Sean's next fight is going to be. Who knows? I could see Eric being back in there. He'll obviously be part of the camp and in the gym. Maybe he won't show up in the corner on fight night, but yeah, this is obviously something that gets blown up a lot because these two are pretty prominent names both in the coaching and the fighting space. But yeah, if you go to what was actually said, like who is sitting here claiming he was wholly wrong. I saw Daniel Cormier kind of come out and be like, pick at the comments of I only want to train world champions. Of course, if you're saying it in the way DC climbed. Like no coach can say, I'm only going to coach world champions. That's not the way it works. But I think he's more of like a mentality aspect that Eric was talking about. And I think DC kind of took it the wrong way there too. So yeah, I mean, it is what it is. We've seen coach and fighter strifes all the time. These two seem like they have the personality where it's not going to turn Extreme Couture into, you know, a uncomfortable or brutal place to be. I think they'll get past it.
Yeah. That's the question, I guess. And it sounds like I already got a feeling from Mike that they will mend fences and be together. Matt, what do you think, man? Is that the best thing for them? They won a world title together. And again, going back to other sports, Billy Martin got fired 7 times from the Yankees, and they kept bringing him back because somehow they felt like there's some magic in there that maybe he can help them win a world title. Then we find out, you know, that Phil Jackson, you know, in The Last Dance, and Michael Jordan, they weren't always fist bumping. Eric Del Fiero told us in studio him and Dominic Cruz didn't talk for a whole year in between some of the layoffs that he had, yet you'd see them together, you know, back together. What do you think, pal?
Dude, I love that you brought up the other sports references because that's exactly where I was going. We see this all the time, whether it be in NBA, MLB, you know, NFL. Coaches will get up there on the dais and they will publicly challenge their teams to do better. Whether it be calling out a player individually or the team as a whole, they will challenge them. They will say the effort was not there. We have to do better, X, Y, and Z, right? To varying degrees. Sometimes it's more intense, sometimes it's more subtle. In this, like Mike said, like he didn't say anything that was out of pocket, right? Everything that Eric Nicksick said, we heard on the camera in between rounds. He just reiterated it in a podcast form, right? And Sean kind of said that, you know, Eric's trying to be like an influencer now. Like, no, Eric Nicksick does interviews with any and everybody. Give him a call. He'll probably hop on your podcast, you know, if you've got a platform, right? So it's not like it was something out of the ordinary either. But I like the fact that, you know, we had a premier coach in MMA get on a microphone and say, hey, I want a better effort from my fighter. And if your fighter can't take that criticism, you kind of got to look in the mirror and say, like, hey, why am I being so sensitive about this?
And just to jump in really quick, since we're talking about other sports, like there is a difference here too, right? Like Extreme Couture, Eric Nicksick is the head coach and the gym manager there and one of the prominent faces, and Sean Strickland gets to train there. But I assume he's ultimately paying Eric a percentage of his purse as well to, like, you know, be to train there, to be in his corner, all that stuff. So it's like a weird dynamic like other sports too, where the athlete is directly paying the coach and be like, hey man, like I gave you X, Y, and Z money and now you're criticizing me and all this kind of stuff. Like there's other lines too that maybe don't fully exist in other sports that just make the situation more complicated. Just like adding the context there, not saying anyone is right or wrong on top of that. It's just kind of another unusual element of it.
This situation is really unique too, because like we've been talking about other sports. In some of these sports, you play the next day, you know, and the win just erases it all. Sometimes the coach's criticism, and let's ask specifically, is towards the team, or even let's just say the defense in football. Well, that's like 20 to 25 players, you know, unless they specifically say quarterback play, what'd you think? You know, then all of a sudden you might have to be harsh towards one person. But the other thing I was going to say, again, the planets lined up. Eric also had to leave his family for like 2 weeks because to go to Australia, you got to adjust and then to go out there. And for that performance, it probably is frustrating. You know, I guess it's not like you can just hop back on a flight and sleep in your own bed and, you know, and go back to work. How about you guys, man? You want to see these two mend the fences and work together, or should they just maybe politely go in different directions?
I think they could, and I think they should mend fences. But, you know, sometimes that's not even really the best thing for a fighter, especially with somebody that like Sean Strickland, who just wasn't responding, right? Like sometimes you just need maybe a different look or something. But I'll say this much, man. Like in sports, Customato, right, and Mike Tyson, they weren't related, but they lived together, and he was a mentor to him. The way he spoke to him was very similar to the way Eric spoke with Sean Strickland. If you look at Floyd Mayweather Sr. and Floyd Mayweather Jr., very similar. Eric has these types of relationships where he kind of embeds himself. It almost becomes like a family member. And I think he was just speaking from the heart, man. And when you do that, I feel like no matter what, you can find a way to fix things. And I think they will. I think they will work together someday. I just don't know if it'll be for this next fight.
Yeah. You never know. All right, let's move on, man. So PFL, we're always harping on them. Hey, tell us what's going down in 2025. We don't know much. We don't know how to react. They used to have what was called a regular season and playoffs. They wanted us to call it that specifically. Now in 2025, they're going to have eight man women tournaments, 3 fights per year, $500,000 for the winner. So they're slowly showing us their hand. And here's the latest involving their new tournaments. I'm going to focus on 2 weight classes that we got information. First, the welterweights, guys. The welterweights, here are some names that are going to be participating this year. Let's see here. Florian Zandelli, Andrei Korshkov, Jason Jackson, Magomed Umalatov, Muhammad Berkamov, Giannis Bashar, Logan Storley, and Masayuki Kikuori. Now, a couple former champions there out of Bellator, a finalist at PFL in Umalatov, and then some new fresh faces. Guys, quick reaction to that. Let's go back to you. Are you impressed so far?
I don't know if I'm going to say I'm impressed. I do think there are matchups there that are going to be fun. They have certain fighters like a Jason Jackson that I think can make things a lot of fun. But impressed, it's just my problem with this, guys, is no matter who the PFL throws at you, I'm just that guy that's going to go, but it could have been so much better had they hung on to some of these people, right? So when you see some of these matchups and you see fighters that have fought each other before in the past, whether it was in Bellator or now in the PFL, it turns you off a little bit. But I'll tell you, there are a couple matchups in there where you can get my attention and get me to watch.
Who's your early lean goes to take this one, take this home?
I think Umalatov or Jackson, one of those two.
All right. How about you, Mike Bond? Impressed? See or no?
I'm not really moved by it. I mean, I feel you could tell me half these guys have already fought each other once or twice over the past couple PFL seasons. I'd probably believe you, and I'm sure a few of them have. So, I mean, like impressive records, all that kind of stuff. But again, it's the same issue, I think, with the seasons, right? Like, who out of those names you just listed, if they win it, I mean, we've already kind of seen the Jason Jackson moment with his like kind of title run and all that kind of stuff. But like, what are these guys doing to elevate the brand of PFL to tell you like, if they win, come out and do interviews and say this experience was so great. Like I challenge all these guys to come in, blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't think this is selling the format, the brand, any of that stuff any more than what they were doing prior. So yeah, we might get some good fights, some good matchups, but like if you're telling me I'm supposed to be more invested in this than the season, just because it's single elimination, like, I don't know. I honestly have worries with a lot of these names that we could get some pretty rough fights, because if you're just incentivizing purely winning now, not even with the point structure, not even you get 6 if you finish it in the first round, like I think these guys are just going to be even more risk averse. So I don't know. We'll see.
All right. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, and that's part of the reason, like to piggyback on what Mike just said, that's part of the reason why I was a fan of the original PFL structure, because it did incentivize at least for guys to go out there. We didn't always get it, but at least it was there, right? You got to go out there and try to get a first round finish, get more points, all that stuff. Anyways, but as far as the field goes, I mean, I think it's interesting on paper because I think everybody's so evenly matched in a lot of ways. So we could get competitive fights. They may not be the most exciting fights in the world, but at least they'll be competitive. So I guess from that aspect, I am somewhat interested, but I have bigger fish to fry with PFL right now than this tournament.
Okay. The featherweights are as follows: Jeremy Kennedy, Gabriel Braga, Movlid Kabulaev, Nathan Kelly, Yves Landu, Jesus Pinedo, Adam Borix, Tai Kyun Kim. I have a feeling you guys are going to almost say pretty much the same thing about these guys that you did about welterweight, and I pretty much agree with all the points. It's like it's news, but I think it just ends there, man, until fight night, until
I
the
look at that
violence
and
starts.
I'm like, oh, that tournament would look very nice with Patricio Pitbull and Aaron Pico in it. But then I also say I don't want to see any of those guys fight anyone else in this bracket besides each other. So I'm kind of glad they're not in it. How about UFC just signs them both and they fight there?
Yeah. Hey, a quick shout out coming from Lazy Bed. Thank you for that super chat, Lazy Bed. He says, shout out to the panel, and he threw some love towards Cold Coffee and Kamikaze. Thank you for doing that. Those are two very talented individuals and definitely part of a big part of SBC, and so are you, Lazy Bet. I see you in here every week. We really, really appreciate that super chat. Ricky Box is coming through us through Facebook. So some of you, if you, for whatever reason, like when I was at work, for example, they might block this, maybe not that. You can come at us straight through the site, through YouTube, and through Facebook. So Ricky Box, it's good to see you there, man. Coming through there. And I want to continue here because PFL, like I say, thank you for the announcement, but we just got to see more fights, and we got to see your best talent, see what you're going to do with them. Guys, in other news, right? Some stuff went down. Tough 33 fighters were announced. What's your excitement level? We do this every year. It's the 33rd edition of this brand, and we've been doing SBC now for like 4 or 5 years, and that level of excitement, I think we're all pretty much have said it's Dana White Contender Series over Tough for us, but every year is different. So let's go back to Mike Bond. What's your excitement level, and what are your thoughts on Sonnen and Cormier as coaches? Was that the right call?
I guess so, because it doesn't impede any divisional titles or any, contenders or anything. They'll, I think, have fun with each other, and I think they'll be committed to this crop of fighters and giving them good training. This media session we had, as Masters of the Universe Classic points out in the chat, was a lot of fun the other day. I think these guys obviously are good friends. They do a podcast together for ESPN twice a week. So I think they will be invested in it. Will that change the level of interest from the outsider or ratings or thing like that? I have my doubts, just because we, have seen so many years of Tough. If like Conor McGregor wasn't bringing this thing back, I don't know what this is going to do to make it any different. So I guess one of the upsides is like, Nolan King. I saw him mention he's got a very firm grip on kind of the prospect scene in MMA over at MMA Junkie. He said he thought this was one of the best casts they've had in quite a while. So credit to them for scooping up guys who could have just sat around to be on the Contender Series or be signed outright or whatever the case may be. That was like one of the biggest issues, I think, with Tough in recent years. Why would you go on there and put yourself through that 6 weeks in the house with no family or friends and fight multiple times when you could just fight once and get on the Contender Series into the UFC? So I don't know if they offered a different incentive money-wise or anything like that for these guys to come, but here we are. So as usual, I'm sure I'll watch the first couple episodes. We'll get to a bad fight or something will fall off, and you'll just be like, oh, this is literally the exact same copy and paste format, editing-wise, as we've seen on the show. You'll tune out. I'll pop back in when there's a clip of the coaches challenge, whatever they make DC and Chael do. And then, the finals will pop up on a card mid-year and be like, oh, hey, here's some of these guys. And that's basically the Tough experience at this point, baby.
If they don't do the coaches challenge, they could send them over to GFL and just have a fight there. All right. How about you, Matt Wells? What are your thoughts here, man? Excitement level. Did they do the right thing with the coaches? They have some nice coaching staffs assembled. At least at the end of the day, maybe these 16 fighters might just get a lot better because these guys will be all in. Like Mike Bond pointed out, McGregor was showing up and missing half the practices.
Yeah, I think it's I guess it's refreshing in a way to kind of change it up in that aspect, right? You're not trying to manufacture a beef between the coaches. Like, just get two guys that are there that are actually genuinely interested in trying to make guys better. And I think the fact that they have that friendly rivalry sort of thing going on between DC and Chael, I think it'll make for some fun interactions on the show. I don't know. I think it's good, right? I'm not going to get overly excited about it, right? Because I'm never overly excited about Tough by any means. But again, to Mike's point, the cast looks fantastic on paper, right? If you guys I watched the media day, a lot of guys said really good things. They seem really well spoken on the mic. They seem like interesting characters as well. So I'll probably will tune in for a few episodes to see how it unfolds.
That's what everyone says. The first two, and then let's see if they grab me or not.
Yeah.
And Shul Jubilee's gas station says, I like the idea of Covington versus Chiesa in lieu of a Chael versus DC fight. Not bad. I like that too. Joseph Boza says they phoned it in with DC and Uncle Chael as coaches. They are pissed that Conor wasted everybody's time. Steve Williams says exactly what Mike said. I don't watch Tough, but I'm a huge fan of not holding up any divisions. All right, guys, let's get your thoughts, man. Excitement level, Do you like this pairing here of Sonnen and Cormier as coaches?
I'm with Joseph Bosa. I actually look. I don't really shit on Tough too much. It's not bad. I try and watch every season, but last season just took a bad turn for me. When you spend the whole season thinking two people are going to fight and they don't, it's hard to take it seriously, you know. And so now they have coaches who have done this before. We've seen them. We get a fill of them on their podcast. I wasn't too thrilled about that. I'm kind of with these guys. I'll watch the first couple episodes. If it hooks me, I'll stick around. If not, see you at the coaches challenge. It's Tough 33. What's the coaches challenge by this point? Paper, rock, scissors. What's left? I mean, I don't know. I'll tune in just because it's better than whatever else is on TV, but it doesn't have that same feel that it used to for me.
I mean,
Maybe pickleball or something.
What did
There you go.
the season for Shevchenko and Grasso that we just got do to elevate their trilogy, right? Like not much. I think we were like it didn't do much. And to Goz's point, he almost thought that Chandler and McGregor was the last season. We've had a whole other season after that, and did that register with anyone? So they're cut out with their work on this point.
Blood on there, though.
I'm very curious to see though, will this be the last season? Because obviously a new TV rights deal coming up and stuff is tough going to be part of the package for whoever gets the next UFC rights.
I want to get like a Colby Covington on there or a Buckley, like some of the younger cats, and really showcase. Let us learn a little bit about some of the younger guys. Make it fun again, man. But I don't know. It's just kind of like rinse and repeat the same thing every year.
Do you guys think Dana phones it in as well? He does show up. He says his things, but they just don't carry the weight. Like in season 1, we would all talk about it at the water cooler. Anyone?
Yeah, of course. Dana phones it in for sure. He doesn't show up to post-fight press conferences anymore. Of course, he's phoning it in now.
Isn't he the one that keeps it alive, though? He loves it, right? He says, I'm never getting rid of it. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it gets the attention that it should.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, his favorite thing right now is Contender Series, so focus on that. Why are we still doing Tough?
They should have a winter season. I know they have 10 weeks in the summer. Just do 5, like a small winter season to keep it going, and then we'll reload again, because I understand it's probably close to impossible to do.
I like the one time a year. I think there's half the roster is Contender Series at this point. Let's get these people flushed out and build their careers before 90% of the UFC roster has like 3 or less UFC fights on it, and we continue the question of where the next stars are coming from. But it's a whole other thing.
But would you rather have a winter season instead of Tough? I guess is what I was pitching.
Instead of Tough?
Yeah.
If it's half, maybe like you said, 5 or something, that's fine.
Another thing, maybe get some legends to coach. Not to say these two aren't legends, but they have jobs. Like some of those other guys that seem to kind of be hurting. Like Mark Coleman was so excited when BJ Penn asked him to be a coach. He was there. He's teaching wrestling, and I'm sure they have great relationships with a lot of fighters that could probably use that and get some of their crew around them to get in there, and fans love nostalgia every time like a Matt Brown or someone else.
Some fans do. I think MMA fans, a portion of them have a very difficult time respecting the previous generation. I don't think, as much as we love those guys, if they're thinking of ratings, I don't know what that does for them. I think that's
Masters of the Universe Classic says, panel, do you prefer for the coaches to fight on a whole, or does it not bother you much, Matt?
I mean, I would like it, but it holds up divisions too much because they're often marquee fights that we want to see, and we don't need to wait, 6-9 months for them.
Goes?
I want to see them fight.
Mike?
It can be a beneficial tool for the right fight in the right circumstance, but for the most part, no.
So let's not get champions that'll tie up the top, but let's get good.
I mean, if they're injured and just had surgery and they're going to be out 9 months anyways, like boom, do it. I have no issues with that. But if we're literally putting 2 healthy guys on the ice to wait for a fight just to do this reality show, which I think we have about 5 to 7 years worth of evidence now that it doesn't really do much to change or build the hype around a fight. It's, I don't think it's anymore.
Karate Ted says, I want to see 2 coaches with history and drama. And Masters of the Universe comes back and says, how about Patty versus Moicano? That would have been fun.
That'd be fun.
That definitely would have been fun. Would have been some train wrecks there somehow. Hey, they keep bringing up Colby, so I'm going to bring him up. He says he wants to go to WWE. You guys think he can fit in a role over there? Says he's got 1 or 2 years left, but he seemed really excited when he was asked about it recently. And I know some of you might go, what the hell, pro wrestling? Guys, Ronda Rousey, Matt Riddle, Shayna Baszler. This has happened before. Matt, I knew you were going to be on the show, and that's why I threw it out there. You were an aficionado of pro wrestling. So it goes. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely not. People may have forgotten Colby Covington did dabble in pro wrestling a little bit with AEW, right? And it just did not work. He's terrible on the microphone, and that is a thing that you have to be good at in pro wrestling, not just like the in-ring stuff. A lot of wrestlers are very good in ring, but when they get that microphone, if they're not interesting, if they don't come off as believable, if they fumble over their words, if they're corny, people will spit you out and say, get off of my TV screen very quickly. And that's exactly what would happen with Colby Covington if he were to go to WWE.
All right. How about you, Goes? You agree?
Yes and no. I think what makes Colby so polarizing is he has that WWE attitude in the UFC, right? And I think that's why it works. But if you take him and put him in a group with a lot of other people that are doing the same thing, just better, I don't know that it'll stick out the way we think it will. I think if you pair him up with the right person, maybe he can make one feud work, but over a period of time, it's really difficult. You really, really have to be good at those skills. And he's not just working on the pro wrestling aspect, the in-ring stuff. The mic is a big deal over there.
Mike, I don't think you're the biggest pro wrestling fan. You want to weigh in, or should I go back to the guys?
I mean, yeah, I don't care about this. Colby Covington turns 37 years old on Friday.
Oh, wow.
He can barely get be healthy enough to fight once a year. Is the idea that he's going to go into WWE and learn all those move sets and how to take bumps and things like that and compete consistently. All the other elements of the microphone stuff, all true. No need to go on that. I don't see that happening. So yeah, I don't care about this.
All right. So one last thing to Matt. Matt, would his shtick of MAGA work? It's very controversial, very divisive, but again, I haven't seen it in a long time, and I remember Sergeant Slaughter and the Sheik, all that. So could it work? Because I didn't even see when he was on AEW. So did he do a form of that, or was he like a different type of heel?
When he was in AEW, he was with Dan Lambert when Dan Lambert was doing his thing, and he was part of just the whole American Top Team gang. It would just be like a whole bunch of MMA fighters show up with Dan Lambert, and then they would wreck shop on random tag teams and whatnot, and just kind of come in, clear out the ring, and then just talk some trash on the mic, and then that'd be it. And then they go off and do their thing. But he just came off as super corny. It was just I don't know. It didn't work for me. I wasn't a fan of it. I liked Dan Lambert. Dan Lambert was fantastic. He could talk some trash on the mic, boy, and he came off as super believable. He would be a fantastic. I still wish he was still doing it, right? I don't know why he stopped doing it. I don't know if it was a Tony Khan thing or what, but he was fantastic at it. Yeah, it's just you got to be believable, man. That's more so than anything. You got to be believable.
Colby's barely believable as a UFC fighter right now.
Exactly.
So I don't know how we're supposed to believe him. I mean, the look on Kamaru Usman's face during that video blog when he walked past him was hilarious. I think if anything, him saying this shows where his head is at, right? He said a few months ago he still thinks he can be champion and contender, and maybe he'll move up to 185 and all these different things. Now he's saying he might move into pro wrestling in the next year or two. So I don't know where Colby Covington's mind is at, but if you're telling me which element does he have a higher ceiling in, I still think it's MMA. So yeah, keep going with what you're best at and try to maximize what's left of this career.
I missed the Usman Covington thing. I just remember something at the Palms buffet, but what else went on?
No, this was just this past weekend. Colby was there because he's in Vegas coaching Tough on the team. He was at the Apex watching the fights, and he was doing a live stream, and Kamaru, who was working as a desk analyst, walked past him when he was getting food or going to the washroom or something, and Colby tried to make him stop, and Usman just gave him a "you're a goofy bastard" kind of look.
Yeah. I shouldn't laugh. I get a lot of those. All right. Goes, did I go to you? I'm sorry. Do you have anything to weigh in here on Colby? Or I got some stuff with McGregor. You want me to move on here?
Let's move on, yeah.
All right, McGregor. He's saying he's going to do it at some point. Now, at some point means he could do it at age 50. But do you think, Goes, at some point McGregor will fight in his own promotion? He is a co-owner. He is tied to the UFC. I get all that. He's got his demons. I get all that. He's got his injuries. I get all that. But at the end of the day, Do you think he'll fight in BKFC? Do you want him to fight at BKFC, even if it's just once?
No, I don't really have too much interest in it, but I would definitely tune in. I think maybe, yeah, he probably will do it, but I don't think it'll be anytime soon.
Mm-hmm. Mike, when we had Ben Rothwell on, I gave him his flowers. I felt like he captured one of the major belts of combat sports. Do you agree? Has BKFC, I guess, established themselves like that, or do you see it more like along the lines of LFA or just something that's way below what we cover here, which is mostly UFC and then your other promotions, throughout the years as well?
I mean, I guess it's the most prestigious title in bare knuckle boxing, so that's something. But yeah, I mean, there's not the history and the all that kind of stuff that goes behind that brand just yet. I mean, Conor's sitting up there and he couldn't name the lightweight or welterweight champion off the top of his head. So like, I think that goes to show where he says, I guess to answer the question you asked, it goes like, I would definitely, I'm more interested in actually Conor fighting in BKFC than MMA at this point, because he doesn't have to grapple. He doesn't have to worry about throwing that leg and all those different things, but it is so far away from reality at this point that like it's not even really worth addressing. The man still has 2 fights left on his UFC contract. There's no sunset clause. He is locked in, and it is going to be a living hell for him to get free, where fighting for BKFC can actually be a reality, unless he wants to do it so bad that he backs up that threat he made like a month ago, saying maybe on one of these random BKFC cards, I'm just going to walk out in an unpromoted fight and just throw down with some guy because I want to fight so bad. BKFC and himself would get sued into the absolute ground, but that would be an awesome little moment. But yeah, I do not feel any differently about Conor McGregor fighting anywhere than I have in the past 6 months talking about him on the show.
All right. And Matt, how about you, man? Do you think at some point we'll see him throw down in bare knuckle?
Absolutely not. Conor's never fighting again anywhere, ever. But hey, just keep putting him up there on these press conferences. And
that's an overreaction. That's tomorrow's show. Never?
Yeah. Nope. He's not fighting again. He's done.
I'm leaning more with Matt, to be honest with you. I've said that too. I don't think it's ever going to happen.
That's an overreaction, Goes. I'm going to tell
what have you seen from Conor McGregor? What have you seen that makes you think he's going to fight, other than him saying, I'm going to fight? What have you seen?
I didn't think Mike Tyson was ever going to fight again, and he just fought a few weeks ago, or I think he did. 10 seconds per round he did. But I don't know. I just think, that whole ever, like, that's why you say never say ever, because just the strangest things happen. That's why I think
could UFC trust him to even headline an event at this point, right? I think that's the biggest concern. Like,
yeah, I think that part's done. I think MMA is done. But
so I think how does he get a path to compete anywhere? Do you think the UFC is just going to be like, hey, Conor, we think you're a nice guy. I know we aren't going to do business in the UFC anymore. You can go fight somewhere else and make BKFC a ton of money, and we're going to let you out of your contract. They're not going to do that.
I think money talks, and they'll find a way to help each other out.
He's going to buy himself out like Floyd Mayweather did back in the day. I don't even know if they would do that.
Right. That's why Dana doesn't shit on him, because he also represents big business one way or another. So I don't know how it's going to happen. Then you got Big Turkey, who apparently can make moves. Who knows? I just think never say never, and that's why I think
Matt, I'm trying to appropriately adjust all I'm trying to do is
and Goes. That's an overreaction.
Listen, George, all I'm trying to do is appropriately adjust everybody's expectations to very low. So when Conor actually finally does get signed for a fight, we can actually be excited, because right now, every time he says, I'm going to fight, look, we're talking about it right now, but he's not going to do it. So yeah. Stop expecting Conor to fight anytime soon, if ever again.
If Dana White announced him in a big fight, I think the Dallas Mavericks would pick up the phone and go, we think you're making a bad decision here. That's how bad that is. You just can't trust it.
Mike Bond, watch this. Matt and Goes, if I had asked you 1 month ago on SBC, hey, what's more likely to happen? Conor McGregor fights again, or the Mavericks trade Luka Doncic? What would you two have said?
Conor McGregor fights again.
Matt Wells?
I would say Luka getting traded, because the history of Dallas sports franchises is not very solid when it comes to managing their teams. So, yeah.
All right.
You have to inflict Matt with that trauma, didn't you?
I know.
He's a Lakers fan, so he's actually feeling it. At least I think he is. Yeah, the city of Dallas isn't, though. Listen, let's look ahead here. UFC Fight Night 252 takes place on Saturday. If you're wondering, it's a 9 p.m. Eastern start time, 6 p.m. on the Pacific time zone for that main card. So let's talk about this fight card going to the Emerald City. Henry Cejudo against Cejudo-Yadong. Is this Cejudo's last chance at title contention? And does he have a real path back to the title should he win? Mike?
Yes and yes, I think are fair answers to both those questions. Since I'm dropping birthday knowledge, he just turned 38 last week, this exact date. So yeah, you'd imagine it's now or never. Like, he has come back and things probably haven't gone the way he envisioned since coming back from retirement, but lost to two of the very best. This is, not to degrade Song Yadong in any stretch, but probably like the worst quote unquote opponent he's fought in years and years, or the least decorated, or whatever you want to call it in that sense. So like, if he loses this one, I think that's more telling, I guess, where he's at than probably where Song Yadong is at. So yeah, very crucial fight for Henry Cejudo. You can believe him or not when he says he was hurt going into the Merab fight and he can do this, that, or the other thing. He was, had more competitive moments in that fight than some of Merab's other opponents. So he has that going for him. So yeah, he needs this one in the worst of ways. And if he does win it, I think there is paths to the title for him. The question is, will it be the bantamweight title? You didn't specify that. I think that door is wide open to him if he can make flyweight again, but that could be too big of an ask given his age.
All right, goes has been stated in the chat. Cejudo hasn't won in a long time. Do you think he wins? And does he have a chance back to the title at either bantamweight or flyweight?
I think people with his marketability, his credentials, they're always just a few fights away, depending on what the puzzle looks like. But I think it's gonna be hard to get it done. He's only getting older. But I will never go against somebody who has had the determination and the fight to win an Olympic gold medal and a UFC title. Can't count those people out, man.
Matt Wells, how much can Yadong gain from a win? Has he lived up to the promise so far, in your opinion?
He can gain a lot from a win right here. Because like the guys were saying, Henry Cejudo is that name that I think just 1 or 2 wins, and he's right back there in the title picture. So if Song Yadong goes out there and gets a win over a former, 2-division champ, that's a big feather in his cap, especially after coming off a loss to Petr Yan in the former champ. So I think that would be a huge win for him. Obviously, I think that would land him in a top 5 opponent next. So he would be right there in the mix, But I think he's got a longer path than Cejudo to get to a title shot.
He's kind of charming and he knows a fair amount of English, man. I think he can go far if he were to win. What's your prediction, Matt? Who are you leaning? Have you turned in the staff pick yet?
I have not. I've not turned in a staff pick yet, but I'm probably leaning Yadong right now. But I got to look at it a little bit more because my main card picks so far this year have been terrible, even though I've been killing it on the prelims. But my main card picks, I got to do a little bit more analysis before I turn in my picks this week.
How about you guys? Which way you leaning?
I'm leaning Cejudo right now.
Mike?
Yeah, I think Cejudo is probably the way to go. I think Yadong still has some stuff to shore up on like the takedown and bottom game end of it. So I think that's going to be tricky as long as Henry actually decides to wrestle with consistency, which is always a question mark for him.
You guys don't have faith in Yadong, huh? All right. Let's see here. How about Brendan Allen against Fluffy Hernandez? What's its meaning at 185? Let's stick with you, Mike Bond. We've been talking middleweight a lot the last few weeks.
I guess a fight with former title challenger Jared Cannonier, if we go with what I said earlier, could be the reward for this. I mean, it's just to keep your head above water, right? Like Brendan Allen, I know a lot of people did like that last fight he had. I've being high on Brendan Allen for a long time now. I'm not selling my Brendan Allen stock yet. I think he's still got a lot of potential. He's young. He can make a run here, but this is going to be quite telling. He did not look great against Imavov, and I think he'll rebound here against Fluffy, who looked amazing in his last fight. So this is going to be really, really compelling, and I think a guy here will be a player for a very big fight in this division.
Mike, the next time you're in Vegas, the loser of this bet I'm about to pitch to you has to buy the other guy a beer. So I'm on Hernandez's side. I think he wins. The winner gets to tell the other guy, "Give me a beer, fool," on command. Bet?
Sure.
All right.
I'll be there in a few weeks for UFC 313.
All right. It's a bet. I like Hernandez in this one, man. That cardio, that relentless pressure, watch out. Although Allen also is pretty impressive in terms of his intensity, and he can go pretty hard as well. How about you guys?
This one's going to be tough. I think it's going to come down to cardio. I think it's going to come down to what it's like in the later rounds. I'm leaning more towards Hernandez, but I haven't sold my Allen stock either. That's my Chipotle brother right there.
He does love himself some Chipotle. Who do you like in this one, Matt?
I like Allen, especially on the betting line. Like if you're a betting man, I mean, he's a huge underdog in this fight. I don't agree with that line. I mean, it's like what, plus 250, plus 260. I think that's a crazy line for all the bettors out there, but it's going to be a good fight. And like Mike said, this is the Killer Gorilla sweepstakes. That's the next matchup for this winner. But yeah, I right now I like Allen as an underdog in this spot. I really do.
Man, when are you going to be in Vegas next? I should be betting you and Goes getting a Chipotle out of you. No faith in Fluffy. Did you guys not see Fluffy Hernandez's last fight?
Yes, he's very good, but
he steals souls out of people.
I am a fan of Fluffy, but like Allen as an underdog right here is, I think he's a very live dog, man.
And I think he's got more than one round of cardio in him, which I don't think you could say for Michel Pereira.
Real quick, and I'll go first. Give me 10 seconds, 15 seconds. What else are you looking forward to? I like Nursultan Rizaboev. He looks like an Uber driver. He looks like a janitor. I don't know, but he's a tough son of a bitch out of Uzbekistan. You know, he's finished 32 out of 34 fights, so he's always can't miss TV. How about you guys?
I don't know what kind of Uber you're getting into, but mine have not looked
We're
like
in
that
Vegas,
lately.
man. You know, 3 a.m. coming out of Spearmint Rhino. You don't know what to expect.
I've been getting soccer moms nonstop. I'm looking forward to Rob Font. I'm curious to see how he's going to react. You know, his buddy Calvin Kattar just suffering a loss, but Firas Zahabi seems to spark something in him. I'm curious to see if he can keep that going.
Matt?
I like John Silva, man, coming off a 3-0 2024 year, looking phenomenal. Fighting Nerds team is doing great stuff, so I'm looking forward to see what he does against Melsik here.
Steve Williams in the chat likes John Silva as well. How about you, Mike Bond?
I'll go the other side of the coin on the Font fight with Gene Matsumoto. He was obviously supposed to fight at UFC 313. They bumped him up to this card when Font needed an opponent. 16-0. Seems like a guy with great potential there. So we'll see how he reacts to fighting a guy in Rob Font, who's been at the top of this division for quite a while.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. What a fantastic panel. Give them a round of applause on the chat. And thank you all for chiming in the chat. We tried to get as many as we could. Shout out again to Cold Coffee and Kamikaze, both talented individuals. And folks, on the way out, if you can hit that like button, we would really, really appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel. It's free content, but it's stacked. I mean, the channel just blows up every weekend. We cover the sport better than any other site out there, and that's why over Ghost's left shoulder we got one of them awards. In fact, we got 5 of them. We just didn't want to flex too much. But yeah, MMA Junkie, keep it locked throughout the week. We got you covered, and we'll see you next Monday again on SBC, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Go out there and be a champion.